Hello again, and welcome back to another edition of The Looking Conservative. Today, I wanted to go over the results of Super Tuesday. And of course, we had to wait for everything to roll in. So, of course, I had to wait a little bit longer to record. Anyways, today's results are going to be coming from ballotpedia.org. So if you want to check my math, because I'm not a math scholar, not very good at, doing percentages and things like that. But I highly encourage you to go take a look at the website for yourself, as I always do. I wanted to break down the results of the Democratic election, touch base on the Republican aspect of the caucuses, early primaries, and kind of tie it all up for you guys. So, if you don't know anything about Super Tuesday, the states that participate in Super Tuesday are Alabama, Arkansas, California, Colorado, Maine, Massachusetts, Minnesota, North Carolina, Oklahoma, Tennessee, Texas, Utah, Vermont, and Virginia. And just if anybody's in Georgia, the early vote has started for Georgia. I went out and I voted. I voted yesterday, and they will run early voting in Georgia until March 20th, I believe. Double check me on that as well, but I believe it's the 20th. The primaries here are the 24th. But continuing on to the results of Super Tuesday, it really looks like it's going to be Biden that comes out on top. And if you've caught any of the early news people, or I don't listen to mainstream media, so I don't know what they're saying on Fox or CNN or MSNBC or anybody like that. But it's looking like Biden's going to come out on top. But I wanted to break down that thought process a little bit so that you guys could get a better idea, because everybody's going to tell you what they think is going on and how they decide that the numbers are panning out and who's going to be the top dog, so to speak. But if you look across the board here, it looks like Biden has won Alabama, Arkansas, Maine, Massachusetts, Minnesota, North Carolina, Oklahoma, Tennessee, Texas, and Virginia. Sanders won California, Colorado, Utah, and Vermont. And the numbers are, kind of back and forth. Most of the winnings were on a very thin margin, 39 to 29%. The largest wins for both Biden and Sanders. Biden won Alabama by 62.8%, and then Sanders ended up winning Vermont by 50.9%. And to give you a little bit of an idea of what that means, if you go back to my Electoral College video, I break down why the Electoral College is so important and how many delegates are given to each state per population and why the Electoral College is so important. And as I was doing the write-up for the show today, I wanted to kind of, understand how the dropout delegates were going to come into play and how that was actually bolstering Biden's campaign by swinging him into, a higher momentum than he had in the Iowa caucuses. But it kind of actually turned into a better argument for, again, the Electoral College. So as I was going through the numbers here and looking at the percentages that each, candidate won by. Now, of course, I believe that Warren and Bloomberg came in with a couple random delegates here and there, and I will get into that in a minute. But, you look at Alabama, for example. In Alabama, Biden took the race and he ended up with 40 delegates. He got 16 from Arkansas. He got 8 from Maine, 34 from Massachusetts, 38 from Minnesota, 56 from North Carolina, 21 in Oklahoma, 28 in Tennessee, 56 in Texas, and 66 in Virginia. And that gives him a total of, I believe it was 399 votes. Pledged delegates, if you will. He had 399 pledged delegates come out of Super Tuesday. When you look at Sanders' numbers, he got 7 from Alabama. He got 8 from Arkansas. He got 72 from California, 20 from Colorado, 9 from Utah, and 11 from Vermont. So those were the states that he won. And of course, he had gotten, significant amounts of delegates from the states that he didn't win, but it put him at a total of 322 pledged delegates. So if you look, if anybody knows, you need 1,991 delegates to win the nomination. And if you look at that on an overall perspective, taking into consideration the caucuses that have already happened and adding those delegates to the ones that they have gotten on Super Tuesday, Biden has about 30% of the vote that he needs for the 1,991 needed delegates to win the nomination. He has a total of 453 votes, like pledged delegates. Sanders has about 24% of the vote, and he has 382 pledged delegates. Bloomberg has came out with 44 on Super Tuesday, and Warren had 42 on Super Tuesday. So based on what we know from the Electoral College, a lot of people will, kind of tell you that, after Super Tuesday, it's a done deal. We know who's going to come out on top and what to expect from who the nominee is going to be. But if you work the numbers out, and again, I'm not a math scholar, I just, kind of did a little bit of playing around with numbers here. But if you look the numbers out, you start to see that it's really, it's a majority vote, but it's not as crazy swing-wise as you would think it would be, because we have, you have Biden, you have Sanders, you have Warren, and you have Bloomberg. So there's still 4 candidates in the race, and it's going to boil down to being one nominee overall. So where are those, after the lagging 3 contestants drop out, where are those delegates going to be pledged, and what's going to happen? And there's all different kinds of things that happen in each individual state with the already pledged delegates. Some delegates will give those numbers to the popular candidate. Other states do, I believe it's a contested nomination, and there's a whole nother election process. So you have to look and dig into each individual state. But it's interesting to find out what's going to happen after the candidates start to get backing from the ones who have fallen out. As we can already see with Buttigieg and I think it was Klobuchar is now backing up Biden. So his numbers obviously have taken a huge step in a big direction, and he's started to kind of gain a swing of momentum from that. But looking overall, after Super Tuesday, 963 Democrat delegates have pledged. So that leaves 1,028 open delegates for taking. And in perspective, that's 52%. It's a little more than half of the people that haven't voted yet. Their voices haven't been heard yet. So when you look at things on an overall perspective, you start to get a better understanding as to what the Electoral College does per voter per state. It really shows you that it doesn't affect or swing as much as a popular vote would swing based on populace per state. As we all know, that each state has a different population number, and those states then in turn would be the ones who would swing our elections. They would be the ones in control of the numbers, in control of the minority, basically. So anybody that would be looking at a higher populated state, their vote would count a lot less. But looking at how the actual nomination system works going into the presidential election, it was very eye-opening for me. Personally, this is the first year that I've followed this. I mean, we all know it to be, that's how our election system works, and that's why we do it this way. But it's very interesting when, like I said, you break down the numbers and you look at the piece of the pie in perspective. I've never been a fan of percentages. It's not my strong suit. I won't, pretend to be some crazy math whiz that knows, off the top of my head. I can't do that. That's not me. But when you look at that's just the Democratic piece of the pie. And those are just the Democrats that are registered and are hitting the polls and going out and voting. So when you go to the Republican side of the coin, Trump won all 13 states that were holding Republican primaries. I think in Virginia, there's one of those contested nomination elections that are coming out. I've got to read a little bit more into that. I'm not exactly sure how that works, but I thought it was interesting that out of all 13 states holding the primaries, Trump won all of them, and not by a little margin. He won by a big margin. And it was pretty interesting to see. So let's go ahead and put that into perspective too. They also need 1,991 delegates to obtain the nomination. And Trump has 830 of those delegates. Out of the 13 states that held the primaries, Trump has 830 delegates that are pledged to voting for him to become the presidential nomination. But that still leaves open 1,160 delegates. So you've still got a really long climb. And this is after Super Tuesday, the big states, the ones that, we put all of our stock in to say who's going to be your nominee and who's going to end up on the ballot at the end of the day. That's 58% of the required delegates to win. So honestly, it's one of the most fair, equal systems that I can think of. It's absolutely eye-opening to go through this process and actually understand what's happening. So just to touch base on the Republican side of the coin, because we spoke so much about the Democrats and what's going to happen, and how Biden is getting the momentum over Bernie Sanders, which personally, in my opinion, side note, I think that's a good thing. Sanders has a lot of radical ideas, and maybe if we keep him off the ticket this time, he won't come back in 4 years to try again. But that remains to be seen. But if you look at the people, because a lot of people don't even realize that there were other Republicans who were fighting for the Republican ticket. And it was Sanford, Walsh, a guy named De La Fuente, and Bill Weld, I think is his name, Bill Weld. Sanford actually dropped from the Republican ticket on November 12th. I never even heard of the guy. So, obviously he wasn't polling very well even prior to any of the election processes. Walsh dropped on February 7th. And I don't even know how they ended up on the Republican ticket, because I went and did a little bit of research just reading about what they were campaigning on. And honestly, I think that they should have been on the Democratic ticket, but I digress. The two that have not dropped yet are the De La Fuente and Weld. So the three notable Republican candidates are De La Fuente, Weld, and Trump. De La Fuente has 0 delegates. After all said and done, he doesn't have any delegates for him. But Weld actually, out of that 831 total delegates that I was telling you about, Weld holds 1, which is why, Trump is holding 830. So I did a little bit more digging past just the buy system that we are in. And another interesting thing that I come across also on ballotpedia.org was the Green Party and the Libertarian Party. Those are the other two big parties that people usually register as or want to get more information on or what have you. So if anybody's interested, the Green Party National Convention is actually July 9th through the 12th. They're going to be holding their convention in Wayne State University in Detroit, Michigan. And they have 21 candidates that have filed for the 2020 presidential election. And the Libertarian Party, their national convention is May 21st through the 25th. That will be at the JW Marriott in Austin, Texas. And they actually have 58 candidates that have filed for presidential election this year. I believe that each of those parties handles their nominee in a separate, distinct way from either the Republicans or the Democrats. I was reading, I believe that the Green Party does it by the popular vote, and the Libertarian Party, I couldn't get too much on that without extending this video past what I wanted it to be. They do something similar to what the Republicans and Democrats do, if I read it correctly. But it'll be interesting to see who they post up as their nominee. So if anybody's interested in getting more information about that and bringing it to me so that I can learn, everybody talks about not wanting to be part of the bipartisan system and, thinking outside the box from Republicans and Democrats. I just wanted to kind of offer that information to everybody and let you guys know that even if you're not thrilled with Donald Trump, if you're not thrilled with any of the Democratic candidates, that there's a bunch of other candidates, 79 other candidates that have the potential to get on the ballot for 2020 in November. But you're not going to know this unless you go out and you find out about it. You're not going to know about how the process works if you don't learn about it, and you're not going to be able to have a say unless you get out and you vote. So again, I am a Georgia voter. I was out. I was making sure that my voice was heard, and I will be in all the elections. And I encourage you guys to do the same. So those are the results of Super Tuesday, and I hope you guys have a super Wednesday. I'll catch you on the next one. Bye.